Oh, there's a good one.
Where was that one?
On the peak, way down there.
Allora perché gli ho detto smettila, vattene via la tua seconda perla. Scusami, se uno ti dice.
Our last video left off at the Bay of Pinarello on the eastern end of Corsica. We continued north offshore for a 75-mile crossing to the island of Elba and the start of our cruise to the Tuscany region of Italy.
So we got about 15 miles to go to get to Elba Island, there in the distance. We've been underway for, it's about 4 o'clock, so we've been underway for 10 hours. And probably have 2 more hours to go. Just want to show you that there's 2 islands that are outlying islands off of Elba Island. This is one, Isla di Monte Cristo. You can see kind of like it comes right out of the horizon there. It's pretty cool, very steep. Apparently you can't go to it. I don't know if anybody lives there or not, but you're not allowed to anchor there at all. So that's Monte Cristo. And over here, we've got Isla di Pianosa, completely different. I mean, it's flat. It's got some cliffs there at the beginning, but it's nowhere near as mountainous as Monte Cristo. So it's pretty interesting how 2 islands pretty close to each other, all kind of springing off of the larger Elba Island there, and this one's like completely flat. Make for a perfect runway if they had to build an airport around here, but very different. So pretty cool. About 2 more hours to go and we'll get into Elba Island. That'll be quite a relief because we've been motoring all day and looking forward to getting in, settled, maybe go for a swim. Up on 13 hours and we are finally arriving, yay, at Elba Island. So it's the harbor we're arriving at. Yeah, it's called Marina de Campo, kind of in the middle of the southern part of Elba Island. So nice little view out here, and we're looking forward to getting anchored and settled and maybe going ashore and getting some dinner after a long day of mostly motoring, but we had some nice breeze at the end and we were able to sail. So a new geography to look at. Very prominent point here on the way in. We lost our wind as soon as we came around that point, and then it kind of switched 180 degrees here, coming right at us. So, Elba Island, it's part of Italy.
After a long day of motoring, it was time the next morning for a run through the interior of Elba Island, checking out local vineyards and rocky, informal hiking trails. But back at the dock, it was a little bit of local color of Italy in the form of a lively discussion, or maybe an argument. It wasn't really clear, but certainly entertaining.
Dopo lui è andato. Allora perché gli ho detto smettila, vattene via la tua seconda perla. Scusami, se uno ti dice, guarda che non glielo data.
Despite the wildly gesturing locals, Marina de Campo has a casual street vibe, with live music outside of restaurants, at the historic town square, and later that night at a packed beach party.
And tonight we are being serenaded by an onshore band. So it's always pleasant. The evening is very cool, and it's sort of fun because it's you've been hot usually during the day, and when the sun sets and you start to get that cool breeze, it just really feels great. This is one of my favorite times of day on board. When the sun's just setting, and I don't know if you can see it, but there's a sliver of a moon up here. And the boats are all around, and everybody's finishing up their dinner, and sometimes you get a nice smell from what somebody's cooking on board.
The anchorage at Marina de Campo turned rolly the next morning, and we moved on to Cala de Innamorato for better protection and a chance to explore the sea life below us.
And the sky is really dramatic. There's been storms on and off all most of last night and part of today, And if you look all the way around us, it's pretty dramatic.
Our efforts to move anchorages and gain a weather advantage proved fleeting later in the day as thunder, lightning, and rain found us at dusk.
Camera going. It's not a map. Oh, there's a good one.
Where was that one?
On the peak, way down there.
I can see the flash.
Wow.
Oh.
You know, for all the lightning that occurs, it's amazing that there's not more fires and power grids that go out and injury and death.
Pretty folks on torch.
Ooh, there we go.
The overnight lightning storm was an appropriate precursor for our walk along the cove the next morning. The Inamorata Cove has a legend within its shores, like so many other places in the Med. The legend, going back to 1534, concerns two lovers, Lorenzo and Maria. The young betrothed girl, the Inamorata, or girl in love, in an attempt to save her future husband, who had been dragged and kidnapped onto a ship by Barbarossa's pirates, jumped into the sea only to be swallowed up by the waves. Only her shawl was found on the rocky shore. We missed the annual torchlight procession on July 14th, but had a chance to explore the discarded remains of the old iron mining operations.
There are purportedly a lot of iron ore mines on Elba, especially the eastern end close to the coast of Italy. And so we may see some more of those as we sail around the island. But they mined a lot of iron off this island. And the last iron mine, I think, closed down in about 1984, so it was a fairly prosperous business for quite a long time. You know, workers lodging, and then this big sort of buttressed section down here that could have been storing iron ore. It's not really clear. And in the distance there's what looks like a chute that goes down to a dock way down below where our dinghy is. So, pretty cool.
Past the scarred landscape of the iron mines, we pushed onward around the eastern end of Elba. On the northern side sits Portoferraio, the hub of the island with a constant stream of ferries coming and going, with each ferry line trying to outdo the others with their eye-catching graphics. While Karen showered before dinner, I did what I usually do at a picturesque harbor at dusk. I launched the drone for an aerial recording of the sights. As the refrain goes, it seemed like a good idea at the time. There were purportedly some impressive fortifications on shore that I wanted to photograph. With a string of super yacht captains carefully maneuvering in position for the squeeze onto the popular cityfront dock, I guided my faithful drone for what I could only dream would be National Geographic-worthy content. Setting up for my return sweep over the ramparts, fortuitously shifting the camera into bird's eye view, suddenly the camera image on the controller froze, and an ominous message scrolled across the display: "Aircraft disconnected." Now, I had already lost one drone this summer to the watery depth and was sure as heck not going to get another black mark on my record. So I took off in the dinghy at illegally high speeds across the harbor on a search and rescue mission. Not caring where the proper dinghy dock was, I lassoed the first piling I could find and in bare feet took off at a sprint into town, dodging people, mopeds, and tour buses. I had seen some birds flying over the city and could only picture them attacking the drone, and it ended up in 100 pieces on some cobblestone street, followed by a wild Italian driving a Charlize Theron Mini Cooper, finishing off the drone for good. But unbeknownst to me, it was still hovering in position, camera rolling, and responding to what I thought were my fruitless movements of the control sticks. As the drone battery ran low, the return to home feature kicked in, and I got a cryptic message on the controller that it was returning to its launch coordinates. Both happy that it was still alive and concerned I wouldn't make it back to the boat quick enough, I double-timed it to the dock, threw myself into the dinghy, and roared out the harbor. I got a message mid-harbor that it was now starting to descent, although I knew this was a bad sign as the boat would most likely have drifted away from its original position. Images of the thing settling down into a watery depth plagued my mind. That's me in the dinghy, in the center of the screen. I ignored any no-wake speed limits in the harbor and briskly maneuvered around ferries doing pirouettes. Suddenly the dinghy started wobbling all over the place and I couldn't hold a straight course. After looking back at the engine, I shrieked when I saw that the whole motor had lifted off the transom and was headed for a watery depth of its own, all because of my hasty departure and a failure to tighten the hold-down clamps. Despite these obstacles, I could see the drone overhead starting its descent, and I was able to make it back to the boat in time, yelling incoherently to Karen that I had lost control of the drone. I threw my wallet down and was prepared to go swimming if needed to, as the dinghy was getting hard to hold in one position. Oddly, the drone stopped just out of my reach and hovered. Karen started up the boat engine and slowly eased the boat forward. Too close though, and the drone would hit the jib furler and fall in the water. Finally, the only solution at hand was to scurry up on the bow, grab the crazy machine with my bare hand. The built-in obstacle sensors tried to resist my grab by throttling up higher, but at this point the battery was spent and it finally succumbed and let me wrestle it to the deck. Phew, crisis averted. The upside of all this was the fact that the drone had been recording all this time, and I was able to zoom in on the bird's eye view while it was hovering over the city. Like a defense special agent in charge of surveillance video, I was able to go back later and ID myself running through the streets, stopping, seeing the return to home message, and sprinting back to the dock. We cooled down at yet another music venue at Elba, this time enjoying a mix of Italian and good old American classics. Finally, we rounded out our tour of Elba at Napoleon Bonaparte's residence. He was exiled here in 1814 while England controlled the island, escaping less than a year later, and after defeat at Waterloo was finally exiled to the island of St. Helena, far out in the Atlantic, where he died 6 years later.
Okay, this is the view from the garden outside of Napoleon Bonaparte's home when he was exiled to Elba. He was here for about 9 months before he escaped and went to France, and then this is looking back at the house that he lived in.
We hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, we look forward to your comments.